All right, welcome to the Latest.com show. I'm Igor Deris. Joining us, he's a military vet and Latest.com senior political analyst from Pittsburgh, Josh Patton. And he's a 24-year veteran of the U.S. State Department and the author of We Meant Well from New York, Peter Van Buren. Well, it finally happened. Donald Trump is the only man standing in the 17-man battle royale. So Cruz dropped out. Kasich is going to drop out any minute now, which means that Trump has now defeated 9 governors and 5 senators with well over 100 years of experience in elected office. No one assumed that he could actually do it. Even as recently as a week and a half ago, everyone still thought that Ted Cruz could steal this nomination away from him on the second ballot at the Republican convention, and there will not be a second ballot at the Republican convention. But, Josh, yesterday on all the latest social media pages, all the Hillary people were just celebrating, saying that a Trump win is a victory for the Democrats. It essentially guarantees Hillary the White House. Look, I mean, we've underestimated Trump a lot. The Republican Party sure did. Aren't the Hillary people making the same mistake that the Republicans made until yesterday?
I think they run the risk of doing that. Again, it's the rational brain tells you that there's no possible way that Donald Trump could be elected president. But that same part of, our rational brain told us that about him getting the nomination. And here we are. I remember when Trump first announced, I had a fleeting moment where I was worried. I was like, wow, Americans love a celebrity. But I brushed it aside, thinking that for sure they weren't such starfuckers that they would nominate Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee. And I was lying to myself. So while, again, it makes perfect rational sense that Donald Trump is going to be a disaster candidate, and states like hard red states like Utah and others could possibly be in play, but Trump has this power to win people over, and if he especially is able to appeal to the states, like the Rust Belt states, like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, in the way that Bernie has, because they have very similar views on trade, it might be a real horse race in the fall.
Peter, a couple of weeks ago, Trump was having trouble breaking 40%. Yesterday, he got more votes than the other two combined. He's polling at 56% now. His support is growing. Are the Hillary people making a mistake and underestimating just how many people this guy can reach?
Absolutely. I mean, you could joke that they're in the early stages of the grief cycle, denial. But the idea here is that the Hillary people don't seem to understand what's going on in America. They're relying on money and manipulation and sort of the Clinton magic of escaping things. But they didn't see Bernie coming. And that bit them hard in the ass. Had it been anyone else other than Hillary and her ability to manipulate things, Bernie Sanders would be the clear presumptive nominee on the Democratic side. They missed Bernie. And Bernie's not done yet. We can talk about that a little bit later. And there are issues. I mean, he's not done affecting Hillary. Let's get back, put it that way. They've misunderstood Bernie. They've misunderstood the electorate. They are pretending that the issues with the FBI and the Clinton Foundation don't exist. And they just don't see how popular Donald Trump is. Look at the people he beat. Serious politicians, people like Jeb Bush, who had the machine behind him, even goofballs like Ben Carson, Chris Christie. These are all people who had been talked about leading up to these primaries as solid candidates. And Trump just mowed them down one after the other. And he did it very consistently by being the misogynist, crazy nutball person that he is. But he's touched something among a lot of American voters, and Hillary will ignore that at her peril.
Yeah, I mean, we roll our eyes anytime, Donald Trump does something crazy, like claim that Ted Cruz's dad was with Lee Harvey Oswald, or his wife is hotter than Ted Cruz's. His wife is hotter than Ted Cruz's wife, but, why
Definitely.
Well, yeah, okay. But Josh, why do so many Democrats assume that Hillary is just going to withstand all these attacks when they brought down everyone he's faced? Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, now Ted Cruz. They were relentlessly assaulted. They had all the money in the world at their disposal, and they still fell apart.
Well, and I think part of what we're doing here is we're feeding into the Trump mythos, which is what helps him win. Trump didn't take down all of his opponents. He took down Cruz, and maybe he took down Jeb Bush, and that's it. Everyone else
Jeb Bush's campaign out from under its legs.
Perhaps, and I think that was part of. We cannot discount how much the diverse field of candidates helped Donald Trump, because again, most candidacies, I think, self-immolated rather than be taken out by Trump. I'm thinking of Rick Perry, Scott Walker, Bobby Jindal, Lindsey Graham. I mean,
those
but Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, and Rick Perry.
Well, Scott Walker and
Rick,
long time ago.
And Bobby Jindal were two very serious contenders.
Those three specific guys were pretty much the only legit.
No, Christie took Rubio down. Christie and Rubio killed each other. Remember, Rubio was actually poised to do well. Now, I was a bit of a Rubio cheerleader, I admit, thinking that I thought he would be the rational choice for rational Republicans. Joke's on me. They apparently don't exist. But Rubio and Christie took each other out because Christie was doing his thing where he was making fun of senators, and he was the one who created the whole thing about Marco missing work and Rubio not having any accomplishment. Trump just does what he does best, and he took other people's insults and then repeated them with his much louder megaphone, and it played a role. But again, the only people I think Trump directly beat was Ted Cruz. And that's because I think any one of these guys could have beaten Ted Cruz, and Jeb Bush, because him taking Jeb Bush down and fighting Jeb Bush most directly was good for him because it was like these were the two front runners, and it was good for everyone else because Jeb Bush would have been a problem for them. So because if everyone had gotten together in that first debate and said we're taking Trump out, things would have went way differently. But they kind of kept Trump as like a pit bull that was roaming loose around the debate stage, just attacking people. And as long as it wasn't you were cool with it. So I don't think that Trump, now that it's just Hillary and it's the entire Democratic Party and the, people who just don't want to see Trump be president for spite, he might have a harder time facing that kind of large-scale focused campaign. Yet, now that he's getting support from Republicans and his unique skill set, they might not be ready for him. But, Hillary Clinton has been beat up pretty much consistently for 25 years.
Well, all right.
It's hard to imagine what Trump could say that would be new.
Accused of scandals. She's been accused of outright crime. She's under investigation, but she's never faced anyone like him and the attacks that he's going to.
I agree. I see that point.
Completely unprepared. Today, she pivoted her campaign towards him. The best she had was calling him a loose cannon. Like, that's a real insult in today's day and age in Trump's America. Peter, how is she going to be able to weather the attacks that we know? They're not going to be arguing policies.
Well, see, that's the problem. She is going to get it from the front and the back. The idea here is that Trump is going to be doing his Trump thing. We could have a pool here about whether he calls her a bitch in the first 10 minutes of the first debate or whether it takes him 20 minutes to do it. And he's going to be doing the whole lying Hillary, the personal attacks, the things that he's been very successful with. But keep in mind how much solid ammunition the other people who are going to make the so-called, we'll call them rational attacks on Hillary, how much they're going to be working on her from the other side, bringing up the long list of things, the emails, Benghazi, the ties with the Clinton Foundation, the sleazy fundraising, anything to do with Bill that they feel is fair game. I mean, pick one of those that sticks with a voter. Now, I mean, there's a lot of voters who will dismiss Benghazi, but a lot of voters who may not dismiss an intelligent look into the Clinton Foundation. But she's not going to be able to handle this. I can't imagine how she's going to answer these personal attacks and not completely lose it on a debate stage. I just don't know what words she will say.
I think it was Chuck Todd or Chris Matthews yesterday during the coverage mentioned that the debates aren't like the party affairs that we have now. The audience doesn't cheer. They don't interact. They're very quiet, sober. Josh, how do you think Donald Trump's shtick is going to play in a debate where he can't feed off the crowd energy like he does right now?
I think that I don't know. I mean, again, the correct answer to any question about Donald Trump in the general election is I don't know. That being said, I have to kind of disagree with sort of Peter's assessment. You know, the Bill Clinton thing, Hillary is praying that he brings that up because that always makes her look more favorable. Because Bill Clinton cheating on her has always made her more sympathetic. I mean, according to like polling that's been done after
he doesn't say, "Oh, look, he cheated on her." Trump straight out goes out and says he abused and raped women. I mean, that's basically Trump's already done that.
Yes, and again, that there's no way that carries with. And again, remember, we're talking. This is the point you make all the time, Igor, is that we're dealing with the Republican primary electorate, which is not at all what the general election electorate looks like. I mean, no matter what the primaries do, the general always looks different. I mean, there was a chart on, I think it was 538 this week, that showed general primary turnout and general election turnout. And there were years where the primary turnout went up and the general election turnout went down. There were years where the primary election turnout went down and general election turnout went up. So this is a whole different ballgame. And I really, you know, again, maybe I'm falling into the trap I fell into last summer, but I just do not think that the dirty Trump, the dirty fighting politics and the crassness with which the campaign's been conducted so far is going to play as well in a general election audience, especially against the first woman candidate, even if it's the greatly unfavorable Hillary Clinton. I just don't think it's going to be that clear cut. Hillary is deft on a debate stage. I mean, one could argue that the debates kept her alive in 2008. She was very good at answering Obama's, you know, sort of hopeful rhetoric and dismissive rhetoric. Can she handle Trump? I mean, it's kind of like a Tyson fight, frankly, coming up. It's like Tyson versus Godzilla. I don't know which one is which. You guys pick. But I feel like
the thing is, if it was a debate, you know, if Donald Trump laid out his carefully researched trade policies, and then, you know, Hillary was going to go and try to poke a hole in them. I mean, of course, then Hillary's skills and her policy knowledge and her ability to, you know, hit those talking points is going to carry the day. But that isn't going to be what Trump does. I mean, he knows he will lose that, and he knows that isn't his strength. What he's going to do is just keep needling her until he gets her to react somehow, and that is going to be the point. You know, this is the ugly Hillary that you all knew was lurking there. This is the Hillary who puts on one face, but in fact, you know, is the warmonger, is this, that, the other thing. She's going to have to answer to Libya. She's going to have to hear her Iraq vote replayed how many times. She's going to have to listen to NAFTA and TPP. I mean, it was just I just put a piece on Latest this morning about how she's bragging that Bill is going to be, you know, in charge of her trade policy. Bill is the architect of NAFTA and is an arch enemy of the people who are on Trump's side of our trade. He is just going to pick on all those pieces, one after the other after the other. He is not going to be Bernie Sanders. His opposite research is going to have every time she's, I guess the word we say now is pivoted rather than changed versus lied. You know, he's going to have every one of those things at hand. She is going to be on the defensive the whole night, and she'll either break or she'll just stay there and be withered by him. Trump looks through the camera. He knows where his audience is.
Well, on the other side,
I think it comes down to.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's going to come down to, and I mean on Election Day, who Americans think less of, and they'll vote for the other person. I mean, because
there was a
you can't
CNN
deny
poll
the
that
fact
came
that
out today that showed that more than half of the people are voting against Hillary or Trump than are voting for Hillary or Trump.
God, you people depress the fuck out of me.
So on the other hand,
I mean, not only are we going to end up with President Trump or President Clinton, we're going to end up with them is because more people hated the other one. I mean, oh my goodness.
and that's in an election when we started with 23 candidates. But all right, so on the other hand, you do have a lot of Republicans losing their shit over the nomination of Donald Trump. John McCain, one of the John McCain top advisors from '08, already said he's backing Hillary. You had a lot of conservatives yesterday burning their voter registration, speaking about never Trump in very melodramatic terms. What do the anti-Trump Republicans do now? I mean, could there be, Josh, like an organized movement of Republicans that actually back Hillary Clinton in November?
I think that perhaps before things get that drastic, I mean, the short answer to that question is possibly and probably. But I still don't think that, it depends on what the delegates do at the convention. There's still the Trump nomination is pretty much a given. But, if they mess with the rules the week before the convention, or if the unbound delegates and the Cruz, Kasich, Rubio delegates are somehow able to,
you have no more
put together an anybody but Trump movement, there might be a chance.
He's running unopposed in 8 more states. It's not like he's going to be short of 1237 or anywhere near that number.
Yeah,
Sure. I mean, but Kasich still got votes in Indiana. People are still going to vote how they're going to vote. But again, I feel that it's more likely that we'll see something at the convention. If something happens at the convention, if there's some sort of never Trump
how they're planning the convention with the Trump campaign.
I understand this. I'm not saying that it'll work. I'm not saying that it's even going to happen. But I'm saying if there's something that happens at the convention, you will absolutely see those people working for the Democrats or against Trump. If the convention goes off without a hitch, your Republicans and conservatives, including Bill Kristol, are going to fall in line. That's what I'm saying about the convention. I'm not saying that it's... So, yeah, if that happens, I don't think we'll see anything. But
No, I mean, if the Republican Party as an organization allows anything like that to happen at the convention, they might as well just shut down, declare Hillary the winner on that afternoon and save us all, a bunch of campaigning. No. They're all going to fall in line. Rubio, Kasich, maybe even Cruz, man, they're going to be sniffing around like dogs.
Not the actual candidates or politicians, but the big talking heads, the Eric Ericksons and the Bill Kristols and that kind of person.
Yeah, well, they've had so much influence on the election to date. I'm sure when the convention comes, they will suddenly occupy the mind space. But look, all of these people now understand Trump is going to be the nominee. He's going to have lots of appointments and positions and down-ticket campaign money. And he is going to be the dog in heat with everybody sniffing around wanting something from him. And I don't think anybody's going to fuss. Anybody who does make a fuss at the convention, the Republican Party will smite, and they'll never convene in that town again.
Well, what about?
I will say this, Igor. I do think it's possible that instead of seeing a Republicans for Hillary kind of thing, it might just end up that they just stay home. I mean, there might be, because again, if we take just sort of Trump voters from the primary election, they're not breaking any records. Trump voters were not the majority for most of the states up until Wisconsin is when he started. After Wisconsin, he started winning. He broke his 40% ceiling. So, I think there's a possibility that if Trump gloats too much, or if it's not handled properly, he could alienate the never Trumpers to not vote for him. I mean, I don't see them. If it was anybody but Hillary, maybe. But I don't see a Republicans for Hillary movement
What about Hillary? I mean, we've been talking about how is she going to win back some of the Bernie Sanders supporters. Do you think she'll make a play for Republican voters who already feel alienated by the Trump candidacy, Peter?
Oh, she can make a play, but I mean, Republican voters hate the Clintons like they hate the Zika virus. The Clintons have been around forever. They have pissed off Republican voters. They have angered so many people. I don't think she's going to pull any of them from Trump. I think she's got far more to worry about what's going to happen to the Bernie voters, who should be sort of her natural constituency, but in fact are the people who are very likely to stay home. You know, she's going to have to try to figure out a way to capture some of those votes. I don't know if she's going to pull much away from Trump. What Trump does with those people, I don't know. I'm not sure they can accept his social policies and things, even though they agree on some other issues. But Hillary's going to have to be looking around for voter pools that she can make some big inroads into. So the black vote, good for her. We all hope that she gets the turnout she needs on election day from that demographic. Women seem to be kind of scattered around. I mean, she's got her hardcore, but there's a lot of very conservative women on Trump's side when you get out into the Midwest. Speaking of the Midwest, I think Hillary's got some issues out there with her trade policies and things like that. She's probably going to pick Tim Kaine as her running mate. He's former governor of Virginia, reasonably popular out there, but more important, there's Virginia and there's Northern Virginia, which is a very Democratic, very pro-Clinton-ist type voters. And then, there's redneck Virginia, which can be hard to organize. Tim Kaine is solid Northern Virginia, solid Democrat, a long-term vassal of the Clintons. She'll pull a lot of votes in off of him. But at the end of the day, she's really going to have to go looking for people who are going to vote for her, solidly support her. And I think she needs to be a little bit worried. Her people need to take a long, hard look at Bernie Sanders' success and try to figure out what she could have done differently and try to apply some of those lessons. Because Trump is not going to take it easy on her the way Bernie did.
All right. Well, you guys dismissed it last week, but I think the third party situation is going to get some serious play in this election. I mean, just this week we had a couple polls. You had a National Rasmussen poll had more than 15% of likely voters who prefer another candidate when this is their choice. You had among those were over more than 20% of independents and more than 20% of young people. There was a PPP poll out of Ohio, same exact thing. 15% of people prefer another candidate to these two, more than 20% of independents and young voters. And by the way, in Ohio, like you mentioned, Clinton's problems in the Midwest. Clinton's up by 3% in a state that every president has won since 1960. So, Peter, you're telling me that in an election with two of the most hated candidates in the country, we're not going to see a highly significant amount of people not choose to vote for the lesser of two evils?
I'm going to go with Josh on, we don't know. There's still a lot of time to the election itself.
The most search term last night, according to Google, was the Libertarian Party, by the way, after Ted Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, people do this. This is a natural reaction. We've never seen a
matchup like this, and it hasn't even gotten as ugly as you know it's going to get.
Oh, I agree. It's going to get nasty. It's going to be fun. Watching the Republic commit suicide, on the revolution is being televised, right? But, I think there's a natural reaction of people to lash out on things. Oh, Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee, so I'm going to Google libertarian. But in the end, I don't see people, Americans, particularly at this point, having the balls to even do stuff like that seriously. I think they'll vote the way they're supposed to vote, or they'll just give up. And I'm leaning. I think this could be one of the lowest sort of turnout elections we've seen in a while, because I think it's just too many groups of people are feeling none of this has anything is me. I don't want anything to do with these people. I mean, for what it's worth, I can't vote for Donald Trump, but there's no friggin' way I can vote for Hillary Clinton. So, what am I supposed to do?
Well, look, we just talked about the CNN poll that showed that most people are voting against a candidate rather than for one, Josh. Why wouldn't a large number of people just vote against both?
I think that will happen. I mean, I think that the turnout may be lower than, say, in 2008, maybe even 2012, just because there is no sort of energizing. I don't feel like these candidates, they would have to do an incredible PR pivot and just actually a complete makeover to become like an energizing sort of force. But I do think that a lot of people will come out to vote against the person they dislike. That is a powerful motivator. I mean, it happens in every election. I mean, it may be to a higher degree this time, but it's happened in all of them. And, to get stupid specific about the Electoral College for a moment, I mean, for the Republicans, the Democrats are going to get 221 or maybe, give or take New Hampshire, electoral votes just for showing up. That's a given. So they really only have to focus on, some of the more swingy states, and especially PA, Ohio, Michigan, the Rust Belt area where trade really is a big deal. I think that for the Republicans to get 270, they would need to win, like PA, Ohio, Michigan, Missouri, which is a swing state always, and or Florida. Maybe take away the PA, give them Florida. So it's going to come down, like it always does, to like the 5-6 swingiest states.
I mean, there's also North Carolina, Virginia, Colorado, Nevada, places like that.
Virginia. Here's the thing: I think Virginia's firmly Democrat. I don't think Republicans are going to get it back. The Democrats have won most of the major election. Terry McAuliffe is actually, he seems to be doing well as a governor. I don't think they're worried about that. I don't think they're worried about New York or, the other places where Trump says he's going to be in play.
That she's only up by 3 in Ohio, and that's really important because a lot of people are looking at the national polls and they're like, oh, well, she's up by 10, 13%. But obviously she's going to trounce him in places like California where she could run up the vote. But if he wins by 1 vote in Ohio, he wins by 1 vote in Pennsylvania, he gets all the electoral votes, and that's a game changer. I mean,
and all he's got to do is say, Secretary of Transportation John Kasich or some shit like that, and he's going to win, and Trump will win Ohio, and Kasich will take those jobs. Clinton's support is not deep, and I'll disagree slightly with Josh about voting against someone as a powerful motivator. That makes people angry. It gets people arguing in bars and over kitchen tables. But the idea of getting an American, to put the Cheetos down, to get up, to go to the polling place, to stand in line, that works most effectively, like in 2008, when you've got a candidate that people really want to support, the Barack Obama palooza there. The idea of saying, I'm going to go through all this trouble of voting, just because I don't want someone. I don't know that that's really true.
It might not be a winning strategy, but I can't imagine that any Mitt Romney vote was for Mitt Romney and not against Obama.
I think you're underestimating the willingness of Americans to give a high and hearty fuck you to the person they don't like.
Yeah. We already have, global low turnouts, right? I mean, average is 60 something. I mean, there's already a lot of people who are checked out from the beginning. So I think the candidate who can find a positive motivator, as well as the negatives, you don't want to throw that, we're not throwing those away, but to the extent that they can, I think that's going to be greatly advantageous. And in that sense, I'm going to give Trump the upper hand. Say what you want about Hillary, but motivational is not one of the words that comes to mind. She can score a few points, we'll say aspirational, talking about women. But in terms of kind of getting people saying, maybe we need to do that, or that sounds pretty good. I mean, her blathering about Glass-Steagall and Dodd-Frank and my husband, and it just doesn't connect. This is part of her failings against Bernie, for sure. you throw in the negatives, and you've got a real horse race. You give Ohio to Trump because you get a suck up like the rest of them. All the other Republican candidates. I mean, Ben Carson is already announced. They've already said he's going to be running Trump's vice presidential selection process. Put a woman on the ticket with Trump, and I've already argued on Latest.com that Joni Ernst might be a good one. There's a couple of other women in Congress. Put a woman on the ticket to try to draw some votes out of there. I think Trump has a very, very strong chance, and that's without any self-destruction on the Hillary part.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the national numbers, they're not really representative of how the math works. So obviously Trump's going to win, Texas. I think he'll win places like Utah, Mississippi, where they said that he was weak, but that was also when he was polling at like 38%. And Clinton's going to run for the score in, California, probably New York, places like Maryland. But the only important states, the one like you mentioned, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Josh, aren't those almost skewed towards someone exactly like Trump who's appealing to the angry white working class voter who's pissed about manufacturing jobs are gone, steel jobs are gone, coal jobs are gone? And
yes, but that's also
places where guys like Romney and McCain couldn't because they could only really pull in voters in traditionally red areas.
But that's the exact same arguments that McCain and Romney were making, and to the credit, Bush also made those arguments, and it was successful in PA. I don't know how effective it will be as long as he keeps saying, unless he's able to talk with some sort of authority about beyond just, we're going to bring the jobs back here, because the voters are angry and they think they're being lied to, and by the traditional politicians. And if Trump starts sounding like them or working with the establishment, there may be a kind of disconnect that takes place. Now, I don't know if Hillary Clinton's never going to win white working class men in the general election, but neither did Barack Obama. So I don't think she has to worry too much about that. But to sort of answer a question you asked earlier, I do think that without Bernie Sanders in the race, Hillary Clinton would absolutely fall back into the old Clinton pattern of move to the center, pull in the scared independents who don't trust Republicans. I think that would be her play if Bernie wasn't still out there making noise and winning states.
Well, you mentioned that he's going to look like a traditional politician. Today we had that report that he's officially going to start fundraising now, which, completely undercuts what was, it was a cute shtick. It wasn't really true, but it was a key appeal to a lot of the voters is, he's not controlled by corporate interests. And now he's going to go out and raise big money and big interest money, just like every other candidate. Peter, doesn't that kind of, isn't that going to resonate with the people that support him now and make him look like just another politician?
Well, maybe. But, first of all, we could spend the next couple of hours listing all the things Donald Trump said, and then Donald Trump either did something different or said he never said it or backed away from it. None of those things seem to have.
He's self-funded every chance he gets, and his supporters do too.
Right.
When they're asked why they
I don't disagree, but I'm saying that Donald Trump has shown a magical ability to basically just say, well, that's what I said, but now I'm doing something different. And that's, he's gotten away with that. So that's one issue. Second, as much fundraising as he does, he's still going to be able to claim that he's got enough money that money really doesn't influence him the way it does Hillary. And he'll find some way of kind of riffing off of Bernie's business about, I didn't collect all this money for speeches. It's being sent to me because now that I'm a candidate because people want to support me, and kind of make a populist thing out of it. There's a lot of plays he has and still be able to do the fundraising. And again, it's going to be very hard for Hillary to do anything. If he comes up with a super PAC or something at this late stage, he can work on that. But Hillary's history of fundraising, including, those speeches. Man, can you imagine Trump? He's going to be up there. He's going to say, I know what she said in those speeches because I'm one of the guys who used to pay politicians to make those speeches. I know why we did it. And those are going to echo very harsh. Hillary is going to have to do it. Did Trump make any $200,000 paid speeches? I don't think so. And so Hillary's line about, well, I'll release my transcripts when they release their transcripts. Well, guess what? They is now he. And that she's going to have to come up with yet another argument why she won't release her transcripts. Because she just got a big dart stuck in the one that she's managed to limp forward on. We have to stop thinking of Trump as a traditional candidate and applying the rules and the standards and the historical examples that we do with traditional candidates, because he has, as we talked about, shown that he just simply is not falling into those slots, and we have to be cautious about applying them.
It's one thing.
Well, I think the other thing.
Last election, both candidates had to raise over $1 billion. I think maybe even $1.5 billion have to raise even more this year. Josh, doesn't he lose some of his independent luster when he has to appeal for huge amounts of money?
I think so. I mean, especially. Again, the one thing about Trump, there's no one, unlike Bernie, there's not a sort of singular issue that really pins him down other than sort of like that kind of nativist anger. And that's just going to be there. There's nothing he could do other than saying, you know what, I'm for amnesty, that would turn that away. That being said, the people who do think that, he's not beholden to the corporate interests, whatever, as soon as they start seeing that, the RNC and Mitch McConnell and all the people that they were beating up on the primary trail, if they're able to bring the party together and start working together, the conservatives or, Trump Republicans who are supporting him could see that as a betrayal of him working with these people that he said were corrupt. And if you think that these voters won't turn on you, well, just ask, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, because before Trump, they were the like kind of conservative, maybe Scott Walker too, were like these kind of conservative fucking lions who would, basically take back the White House like with a flag and like it was like they were making a charge up a hill. And
oh, we lost Josh. I don't know what just happened. Josh just cut out. Hey,
sorry,
Josh pressed something.
Yeah.
Jackass.
Trump already trying to silence me. Yeah. They're trying to silence the truth.
Censorship in Trump's America.
Yeah, we better get all these points up now before we're at work camps.
Outside of the fundraising, the other way that his campaign is going to be different now than it was before, he's going to have a running mate. So Peter mentioned Joni Ernst. A lot of people have said he's going to go with an establishment guy like Kasich or Rubio to appeal to those party types. Some people have said he's going to go with a general or military leader to appeal to people who are worried about his inexperience. Peter, why do you think it's going to be Ernst?
Well, you go with someone who's going to balance.
Who is Joni Ernst, first of all?
I forgot, but she's a senator from Iowa, and she was the first woman ever to go to Congress from Iowa. She's the first woman veteran ever elected to Congress. She was an officer in the National Guard. She is a warm associate of the Koch brothers, which brings along their support and their money. She has, we'll call her mediagenic as these things go. She's known within conservative circles, so she's not going to appear out of nowhere like Sarah Palin, but she's not as widely known among the American population, which gives her a little bit of that, new product on the shelf snap. The main thing about picking a woman, whether it's Jody or someone else with Trump, is how much air that pulls out of the Hillary campaign. He's going to give, if he does that, he's going to give women who believe in this aspirational message, who are shading away from Hillary, he's going to give them a place to jump to. He will also be able to use a female running mate to take shots at Hillary that he may not want to do himself, as he wants to move more presidential, if you will. She'll be able to take Hillary on more directly, kind of woman to woman. She'll also be able to pull the veteran card that Hillary obviously won't be able to do, and talk about, I've served. When time comes to make decisions about sending people into combat, I know what it's all about. I mean, yeah, I know it was the National Guard, but I mean, I think she deployed to Iraq. But I mean, the point is that she has a lot of strengths, or someone like her, that are multidimensional. That you could easily see Trump going with Rubio or whatever. I mean, Chris Christie right now is just, he's like photobombing Trump everywhere, trying to get in there. But these are people that don't really add a new dimension to the ticket. Some kind of military officer, a more traditional, military general man kind of guy, sure. But I think he can get a lot of that through a woman like Ernst, who has the veterans background, and he can seed these other kinds of people into his administration, into the people who represent him on the campaign trail. And I think if he's clever about it, it'll seem less politically opportunistic than, say, Hillary picking a former governor of Virginia in hopes of buying off the state.
Oh, Josh, how likely do you think that he would try to counteract these women attacks by picking a woman running mate? And do you think that he's going to go with someone who's more maybe aligned with the Tea Party wing of the party, like Ernst, or do you think he's going to go with someone more establishment?
Well, I don't think there's really much of a difference between the two when you get down to it. I really don't.
John Boehner.
Yeah, but I do. I will say this. I like Peter's case for Senator Ernst so much, and it makes so much sense that I'm almost positive that they won't do it. She would be an excellent choice. But I do tend to think, yeah, I do tend to think that he would go for someone more establishment, and I also think he's going to go for someone who wasn't in the primary, just because there's really no one, or at least got out early enough that they weren't dinged too badly. I'm thinking maybe he might go with someone like a Scott Walker, maybe, and someone from a big state. That I think the state thing is going to come into play for the Republicans a lot, because again, Trump kind of makes things possibly more competitive than they would be otherwise. So to counteract that, they're going to put like somebody from Texas, maybe, someone from the South, on the ticket to counteract the New York values sort of fears. And honestly, in a non-Trump election, that could have been a conservative like Kasich or Bush, or somebody like Cruz, or maybe Bobby Jindal.
Now, the reason I don't think that it'll be Ernst, though, is she was literally just elected. I mean, if you put her on the ticket, that ticket has the combined experience of the however many days Joni Ernst has actually been in the Senate. So that would be a pretty risky pick. But, all right, so last week we saw Trump in California, and there were protests everywhere he went. There was smashed up cars. They were running through whatever to get to him and to get to the doors. We saw even crazier protests in Chicago just a couple months ago. How big of a protest movement do you think we're going to see, Peter, now that he's actually like the nominee? Is he going to have to go through the back way everywhere he goes, like in California, where he had to abandon his motorcade on the freeway and jump off a ledge just to get in the hotel?
Burn the whole fucker down, man. That's what I say. Protest, people who are actually willing to go out and fight in the streets, is a small but determined minority. So it'll be interesting to see how that dogs Trump over the summer, and particularly at the convention where these kind of things tend to have their focus. Trump feeds off it, though. That's the problem. It makes him look better to the redneck nutcases that are his core supporters. He's up there like Goebbels, cheering them on. Break a few more heads out there, guys. So I don't think the protests are really going to hurt Trump, and I really hope people don't get hurt. But I suspect we will see some violence across the summer, leading up to the burning of the Reichstag in the fall. But between now and then, hopefully there won't be too many people get hurt, and there won't be the kind of real tragedy that where someone decides, to stand his ground and shoots someone. Those kind of terrible tragedies that accomplish nothing.
We saw protests of Bush, but that was like a big event, like the '04 convention. It was after the guy basically already committed war crimes. Donald Trump is just talking, and they're already going after him everywhere he goes. Not everywhere he goes, but like the liberal areas that he goes into while he's campaigning. Josh, how much more of this are we going to see, and how crazy do you think it gets?
Well, having been in the mix of one of the anti-Trump protests, with the protesters on one side and the police and riot gear on the other, and that was just bad timing. I don't think it's going away, and in fact, I think it's kind of a boon to Hillary Clinton because it is an apolitical sort of thing. There's a few people who are like pro-Bernie people, and that's the line Trump goes with, is that they're paid agitators from Bernie Sanders, which that doesn't even make sense. Like, if anyone's going to pay agitators, it would be like the evil Clintons, wouldn't it? But I don't think it's going away, and I think it, yeah, really. I think it will be a problem for him, especially when he tries to make plays for these, liberal states, or the liberal-ish swing states like PA, maybe even down to out west, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, places like that. I mean, the places where the protests were the worst for the primaries, I think it's only going to get bigger for the general, because again, it's the general election now. It helped him in the primaries because he needed to fucking get the rednecks, needed to get their tobacco juice flowing because he wanted them to vote for him. Now that he's the Republican nominee, he has them in the bag. And the smart sort of campaign move is to now pivot to those people who you don't already have. And I guess perhaps that might be my reticence to sort of accept how well Peter thinks Trump's going to do, because I just don't see him being able to run the kind of general election campaign you need to run. I mean, he can be vague and say bullshit. He's pretty expert at that. But, when it comes to the general electorate wanting to know, well, wait, how? And, you're going to stop ISIS, but how? Do you mean war? Because I'm not cool with war. Republicans, they're down with the carpet bombing of children and daycares and hospitals and family members because, they want to bring Jesus back and bring the curtain down on this whole fucking thing. But the general election people, the independents, they just don't want to pay 60% in taxes, but they also, would like us to not be at war. They want to get a job, but they don't want to, have to worry about Japan not keeping control of their nukes in their next earthquake or tsunami. It's going to be a much different conversation going forward. And I have no idea how he's going to pivot from what he is now, or if what he is now would even work for the general. I mean, there's so much we don't know.
You look at, talking about some of these foreign policy issues, Hillary herself has been very, very vague on specifics. I think we made some jokes in an earlier podcast about her plan to defeat ISIS, which was, number one, defeat ISIS. Number two, organize a global coalition to defeat ISIS, things like that. People like simple answers. They like simple answers that make them feel good. And Trump saying we're going to defeat ISIS, we're just going to bomb the hell out of them. That resonates with folks. As far as wars, no, nobody wants another war, but Americans seem to have gotten to a place where, 10,000 people on the ground in the Middle East and bombs falling all the time and all the stuff that's going on in Iraq and Syria right now somehow doesn't constitute a war. And so if you can do that and not call it a war, I think Trump can do what he wants to do. So I don't know that's going to plague him. Going back to the demonstrations, I think...
Peter, we said hundreds of thousands and people forgot that there were wars,
Yeah,
so it's,
yeah. So, I mean,
that's just how it goes when you, with the volunteer military.
Did it look like a war when you were there?
I mean, it did. It did. There was, believe it or not, I was like, wow, there's helicopters and shit. I've seen this in war movies.
And did your boots actually touch the ground? This is one of the questions I never asked.
No, listen, to be fair, I did have a vehicle. It was a World War II era deuces and a half, but I did have to touch the ground from that to the chow hall and then back.
Okay.
So
you are confirming this. No, yeah. I mean, the riots, the things with Trump, the riots, they do work into Hillary's favor a little bit because, I mean, one of the themes I think she's going to hit on in the campaign is that Trump is irresponsible. She's already called him a loose cannon. She managed to insult all the original Americans by saying he's off the reservation. I mean, she'll get her messaging down. But, I mean, the idea that Trump is...
That was an unforced error.
out of control in some ways. Those riots are going to play to that, and I think she'll use it to her advantage. But again, a lot of them are happening in places like California where Trump may not be expecting to do all that well himself. Keep in mind, too, that Trump's lack of specifics is something that he has and will try to continue to manipulate into a good thing. He's presenting himself as the CEO. He doesn't know everything about tax policies when he's out there building his real estate, but he's got a guy. He doesn't know how to manipulate abatements and building permits, but he's got a guy. And I think he'll make that same argument while Hillary is mumbling about Dodd-Frank. I mean, he'll say basically, I've got people. I'm going to choose, the Secretary of Treasury, who's the smartest guy in the room, who's going to handle that. The same way I do when I built my $1 billion business. What he's got there. And so he will be very clever about twisting some of those things around. He'll put a lot of pressure, I think, on Hillary if he starts suggesting who's going to be in his cabinet. Hopefully not Carly Fiorina. That's she now goes down in history as the only person to have lost twice in the Republican.
Old typhoid Carly.
Yeah, hopefully not her. But the idea that he starts pulling in some names about, I don't know who's the smartest guy in the room about money, but I mean, he starts pulling these names in. And saying, I don't need to know all the details. Hillary knew all the details, and she voted for Iraq. And Hillary knew all the details, and she prompted the intervention in Libya. So maybe it's better I don't know all the details. He's good at that. He's good at twisting those things.
The one thing I think we're missing, too, though, and that we haven't talked about, is how the coverage of him, if it will change, and if so, how. Because, I mean, up until this point, it's pretty much been point a camera at Trump, and then just kind of like smile and like, you see this fucking guy? The general election, things do tend to be different. And, I like to defend the press, but there is a narrative that forms, whether it's conscious or not. And I do not see the media narrative forming into Donald Trump being good for America. And, this has been a record-setting primary election. I mean, it's tied 2008 for the highest amount of turnout, which is a paltry 30% of voters. 30%. That's our shitty turnout in general elections, which is like near 60, is about double what we've seen already. So there are people, believe it or not, who maybe they don't not have a clue, but they haven't paid any fucking attention. And as soon as they start paying attention, and if the coverage sort of stays as it is, and lets Trump just do his thing to an open camera, it might be as it says it's going to be. But if they make their coverage more in depth, I think Trump's numbers will fall fast.
The other thing is Trump can already go ahead and run. Hillary technically is still locked in a primary race, and while she's the obvious nominee, I mean, she just lost yesterday. She lost in a state where every poll had her favored. And I mean, coming up, he's not heavily, but he's favored in West Virginia. He's got a really good shot to win both Oregon and Washington. He's probably going to sweep up the smaller states we're going to see in June, like Montana, New Mexico, North and South Dakota. I mean, Bernie's made it clear he's not getting out, and he's also threatening to stay in all the way until the convention after the primaries are over. Peter, do you think that he's going to last until the convention? And do you think that hurt Hillary or no?
Yes, and yes. I said at the top of the show that I think Bernie still has a role to play in the election. And even though his path to being the nominee is murky at best at this point, every time the story on the news is Hillary lost, that really dilutes her core narrative. I'm the one who can defeat Donald Trump. I'm the one who's going to go forward and lead America, but I lost to Bernie Sanders again.
In 18 states already.
And they just sort of keep accumulating. And the ones where she, the big win, for example, in New York was not as dramatic as, people kind of expected. She was a senator from New York.
It didn't hurt Obama, though, in 2008. And he lost New York. He lost a lot of primaries.
And Hillary won all the ones at the end, too. Except I don't know about California.
But Obama was Obama. That election was Obama, was the universe speaking to Obama. It was history. The Yes We Can, all his inspirational speeches, the idea that we're going to elect the first black president. That was something very, very special that went on with Obama. And again, in many ways, kind of messes with the normal ways that you kind of track elections. But get back to Bernie. So let's look at what he's done in terms of hurting the Hillary candidacy. First, he keeps pushing out there the narrative that she can't win. That is not a good place for her to be. Is every week getting her ass kicked in a new state. She looks stupid this week in West Virginia, trying to weasel out of her comments about coal. If she loses again, and then she loses in Oregon and places along the way, it's just a bad theme that's developing here. If she can't beat Bernie, how is she going to beat Trump? Next, he has forced her to the left, which means she can't be where she wants to be, which is basically running as a moderate Republican in any other normal cycle. That is not a good thing for her. He's potentially going to split the party or divide some portion of the party. Some portion of Bernie Sanders voters are not going to vote for Hillary, whether that's by voting for someone else or staying home. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He also is going to be kind of lurking out there. He's going to be sort of in the background, and Hillary is going to have to pay some kind of homage to him. And that's not going to help her in the general election. Because as unelectable as Bernie probably would be in a general election, and I know what the polls say, but at the end of the day, I think Americans would be frightened off by the whole socialism thing. But as unelectable as he may be, him in the background, Hillary is going to have to kind of keep him on the train, and that's not going to help her in there. But the last point that, and it may be less so because she's just has the ability to suck up money, but she's got to keep spending money on the primaries, which is not something I think the campaign anticipated they would still be doing in May. And that may chip away at some of the cash that she would prefer to spend, starting in September.
All right. Well, this was a depressing podcast.
Oh, well, wait, hold on. I gotta respond because I couldn't seconds. Agree. Okay, thank you. I don't think that's true at all. I think, because again, to bring up the coal thing, Bernie is saying he wants to bring back manufacturing and coal jobs. He also says that climate change is the greatest national security threat the U.S. faces. Part of Bernie's success is because he hasn't been as examined and as torn apart as Hillary Clinton has been over her entire career. Bernie is wildly inconsistent on a lot of things. He, like Kasich, does well in national polls because he is a placeholder for not Trump, not Hillary. I think that it's good. I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think Bernie's going to rally to Hillary. I think that if he has enough delegates, she'll have to put him on the fucking ticket. And I think that the Democratic Party will be able to come together sort of the way 2008 worked.
Wait, when you said ticket, you mean vice president?
If he has enough delegates, he could probably, yeah. I think that if he has enough delegates, and if he wins the party platform, and Hillary is scared enough about what losing his supporters would mean, I absolutely think that because again, you say she has too much ego to do it. I say that because her only thing that she wants to do is be the first fucking female president. And she will do whatever it takes to do that. I mean, I think she would have been Bernie's vice president and then smothered him on Air Force One before the inauguration.
Yeah, have him shot in Dealey Plaza in Dallas. But that's not
have him go hunting with Cheney.
I got $5 and a Diet Coke that says Bernie will never be Hillary's vice president. You in or not?
I'll throw in a Diet Coke.
I'll take the bet, and I know I'll lose. I'm just saying it's a possibility.
Okay, Latest.com listeners, you are the witness here. You hold the money for us.
That's right.
They're a reliable crew. They won't grab it and run. All right, with that, we're gonna check out and check back in next week, see if we still have a country and a functioning political system. Thanks for tuning in. Keep reading Latest.com.